Everyone, we are back to the book Liberation. Before we start chapter 10, just a recap of what we saw in chapter 9. Andre Luiz, Eloy, his companion, and Gubbio, the mentor, after receiving an authorization from Gregorio, the leader of that place in the lower zones that they were visiting, trying to help and assist, received the permission to assist on Margarida's treatment. Margarida is someone very close to Gregorio, and he had commissioned a team of spirits to harm her and cause the discarnation of Margarida, so she could be back to be with Gregorio. And Gubbio asked for Gregorio for an authorization to be part of the work, for Gregorio not to interfere. So they arrive at the house. She's obsessed by a large group of spirits. She has the head of the group, whose name is Saldanha, is taking care of all the process of obsession that she's going through. They accompany them to a Catholic mass, and the part of the chapter was the description of everything that was going on in the mass, the spirits, the obsessing spirits, the disturbing spirits, the protecting spirits, and everything else. After, by the end of the chapter, they go back to Margarida's home without any major change in her state because of the mass. So nothing really helped, but it was a good learning and understanding for us of how the spirits act on a mass or any religious meeting that we can attend. So we're back at Margarida's home, and that's where we start chapter 10. Philip, you read for us?
Oh, okay. A learning experience. When we arrived back at Margarita's home, I was extremely surprised by the fact that our instructor did not do anything to defend the dear patient. Exhausted, the young woman went back to bed and gazed blankly into space, absorbed by an indefinable dread. On Saldinia's cue, one of the unfeeling magnetizers began applying disturbing energies over her eyes to irritate the support tissue. Not only did the lenses of both her visual organs register hallucinatory phenomena, but the ocular arteries also displayed obvious modifications. Once more, I saw how easy it was for perverse spirits of the darkness to hypnotize their victims, imposing psychic torment on them in any way they pleased. Tears bathed the patient's face, revealing her inner troubles. Delacerated, her afflicted and suffering mind tyrannized her rapidly beating heart, causing grave alterations throughout the organic cosmos. After completing the complex operation on her eyes, the magnetizer turned his attention to the vestibular cochlear nerve and auditory cells, infusing them with a dark substance as if he were filling a gas tank. Even if she wanted to, Margarita would not have been able to get up. A thick emission of toxic fluids was mixing in with her lymph in the semicircular canals. Once this weird procedure had ended, Saldanha dismissed his dreadful collaborators, except for the two in charge of the hypnotic work, telling them they had work to do in another part of town. Other cases were waiting. Can't see the top line.
For Gregorio's legion, and in the head tormentor's opinion, Margarita had received enough prostrating matter for the next 30 hours.
The house emptied little by little so that it now resembled a nest bereft of its voracious hornets. Saldana, the two magnetizers, and the three of us remained behind, along with the group of minds in ovid form, which were attached to the tormented woman's brain. Alone with the fearsome obsessor, Gubbio tried to discreetly probe his soul. There can be no doubt that your faithfulness to your commitments is very admirable, stated our guide. And as Saldana smiled at the flattery, Gubbio continued with a penetrating yet gentle look. What led Gregorio to entrust such a delicate mission to you? Hatred, my friend, hatred. For her, asked Gubbio, nodding toward the patient, not for her personally, but for her father, a soulless judge who wrecked my home. Exactly 11 years ago, his cruel sentence fell upon my descendants and destroyed them. And because of our instructor's look of genuine interest, the wretch continued. In rebellion against my extreme poverty and overcome by rampant tuberculosis, I abandoned my physical body, but was unable to leave my home environment. My poor Iracema had left me a dear son to whom I was not able to bequest any appreciable resources. Consequently, George and his mother were faced with difficulties and afflictions that I cannot recall without immense anguish. George worked as a laborer, but could not support them well enough. His mom languished silently in continuous suffering. Even so, George got married when still quite young to a co-worker who gave him a tormented,
suffering little daughter. Life was going on as usual for that undernourished
and protected home, where a certain crime involving robbery and murder struck the place where my poor boy was working. Due to circumstantial evidence, the guilt felt on him. I went with him to prison and without any recourse to help him. I watched the infernal interrogation to which he was submitted as if he were a common murderer. Well, from the moment I attached myself to my family after the awful moment of my corporal transition, I never felt disposed to submission. The human experience had not provided me with time for religious or philosophical studies. Very early on, I grew accustomed to rebelling against those who enjoy the world's benefits to the detriment of those disfavored by fate. And when I saw that the grave did not reveal some sort of miraculous realm, I preferred to continue my life in my dingy slum house, where living with Iracema, through deep magnetic ties, comforted me somewhat. I witnessed detestable incidents with indescribable horror. I felt humiliated, and as a man who was invisible to incarnates, I visited wardens and departments, authorities and guards, trying to find someone that could help me save George, who was innocent. I even identified the real criminal, who even now enjoys a highly desirable social position. And I did everything I could to rectify the opprobrious process, but nothing worked. My son suffered all sorts of mental and physical atrocities, punished for a crime he didn't even commit. Discouraged because I couldn't get any satisfaction from the prison's interrogators, who managed to coerce outlandish confessions from my son, I went to the judge in charge of the case in the hopes of intervening. Instead of accepting my inspiration, inviting him to show justice and mercy, the judge listened to the opinions of influential friends in political circles who, in their eagerness to pardon the true criminal, were highly interested in an unjust sentence. Saldana paused briefly, accenting the expression of his profound rancor, and then continued.
Words cannot begin to express my suffering. Jorge underwent awful torture.
And Irene, my daughter-in-law, overwhelmed by necessity and misfortune, forgot her obligations as a mother and committed suicide to be near my poor son's unhappy spirit. Tormented with grief, my wife discarnated on a cot of poverty and joined the anguished couple. My granddaughter, now a young woman, now threatened by an uncertain future, does the housework in this home, where Margarita's insane brother subtly tries to lead her into grave moral aberration. The judge in charge of the family received my vows of revenge in a dream and placed her here with his own family in an attempt to repair his crime somewhat. Even so, my revenge shall be no less severe.
Thanks, Philip. Sorry for the long part, but I thought it was important to read the whole story. And let's go beyond the drama here and the story. Let's try to understand the process. I know his story is very dramatic and very interesting, but let us look beyond it. Try to see the influence of the spirits and the persecutions, the cause of persecution. The first thing to remind here is that she's not an innocent victim, right? By reading this, we start thinking that she's an innocent victim. An innocent victim doesn't fall victim of spiritual obsessions. If she doesn't have anything in this present incarnation, which is, they don't say anything, but is likely, of course, we saw that she had a guilty past, her association with Gregorio, and we read before how she influenced Gregorio and how much he wants her next to him as also a vengeance, but also because of his love for her, tells us that she has a past. So because of the past, she's open to these spiritual influences. She's open to receive these attacks. Could she have changed and defend her from defend herself from this attack? Yes, depending on the lifestyle that she chose, and if she had led a life of a positive environment surrounding herself with spiritual good values, she could find some protection against the attack. She would attract the protecting spirits that would prevent this attack to happen. But that they don't say it here. But it's important for us to remember that we are never open to attacks if we don't open ourselves to receive this influence, okay? So the magnetizers here are attacking her in making her have hallucinatory phenomena, and they attacking her also on everything's connected to the mind, because in the end it's the mind that plays the part, right? The important part. So she's suffering through the eyes, through the ears. She's hallucinating. She's hearing things. She's seeing things. All the symptoms of mental disturbances that traditional medicine would diagnose with as craziness, or things like that, bipolar disorders or other things like that. She was in the bed, couldn't leave the bed, and Saldanha, happy with what they were doing, dismiss the workers, just stay behind just him. And the hypnotizers that were working, the two in charge of the hypnotic work, and also those that stay behind, Andre Luiz, Eloy, and Gubbio, plus the group of minds in ovoid form. Just a reminder, we studied ovoid a couple of months ago, but just reinforcing the notion here. Ovoid are forms as spirits that lost their perispiritual form because of monoideas. There are three types of monoideas that can cause us to regress, to lose our perispiritual form and go back to an ovoid form. The first case are primitive spirits that, because of their lack of understanding of their surroundings, when they leave the physical world, they become so afraid of everything that is around them that they start thinking only of the life they left behind, the place they left behind, and they end up losing their perispiritual form and becoming an ovoid, which is not a case that we have anything much close to do, because there are very few primitive spirits on Earth at this moment, if any. The other two, which are more important to us, one is out of vengeance. You become so obsessed with getting vengeance for a crime that you were victim, or for something else, that you forget everything else. And when we go back to the spiritual world, we do not have the distractions of the physical body, so we can focus our mind on where we want, and by losing everything, all the focus on everything else, and focusing only on the vengeance, on the hatred, on the inferior thoughts, we may lose the perispiritual form and become obsessed with this monoidea and become an ovoid. And the last one is when we are immersed in our deviations, could be sexual deviations, could be other types of deviations that cause us to have these addictions. And when we go back to the spiritual world, we can only think about this addiction that we left behind, and we forget. We aim for fulfilling these addictions of the physical body we just left behind, and we become with this monoidea, we become an ovoid. The ovoids are used by inferior spirits by even evil spirits in these cases of obsession. So depending on if they want to attack let's say the genesic center of energy, they will attach an ovoid that is with a sexual obsession. If they want to attack someone in the cerebral area, they may attach an ovoid that has hatred. The ovoids, they don't know what they are doing. They are immersed in their own world, but they remove the energies from the patient they are attached to. The sexual energies, the mental energies, and other sort of energies. So they are used in that. In most of the cases, in the vast majority of cases, the ovoids are the only way for them to get out of it is through a new reincarnation, because that's when they go, when they attach to a new perispirit that is being formed. In the very beginning, the perispirit has an ovoid form, right? The newborn has an ovoid form in the mother's womb. So they start growing in the mother's womb. They regain a perispirit with a new physical body, and with that, they will be able to have a new perispirit. Not really new, because we never lose the perispirit, but a new form of the perispirit. Okay, just a recap of how ovoids work. here. So again, Gubbio, Andre Luiz is very upset that Gubbio is not doing anything, right? Is not working actively to rescue Margarida. But of course, Gubbio knows better, and he knows exactly what the type of work he has to do. So he's doing it in a reasonable way, in a way that he can be more effective. And Andre Luiz, representing all of us, very impatient, wants to solve the problem as soon as possible, and want to, put Saldanha and all those persecutors in a firing wall and arrest all of them, right? And that doesn't. Gubbio knows better and knows that doesn't work. That you need to do a work in the proper way. So what he does is to approach Saldanha and try to understand what's the reason why Saldanha is doing that. And the first thing that he asks is why Gregorio chose him for that mission. And the answer is direct and very clear. Hatred, my friend, hatred. There it is. We understand how this spirit attacks work and how the process starts, hatred. And but it's interesting that it's not hatred for her. It's for her father, the judge, right? He calls here the soulless judge who wrecked his home. And then he tells the story of his family. He discarnated with a tuberculosis, and but as an inferior spirit, a spirit with no knowledge, as he mentions here, or no knowledge of spirituality and of the spiritual world, he stayed behind in his home, attached to his wife Iracema, and his son, and he trying to feed from their energies. He's not trying to help them. He is in a sense, but he doesn't know how, because he's still a very unevolved spirit, right? So he's feeding of the energies of his home, trying to be of some assistance without knowing exactly how. And he says here, he was always rebelled against those who enjoy the world's benefit. So when he discarnated, he didn't see any change, and he continued attached to his house. And then he saw his son being accused of a crime he didn't commit and being condemned by this judge, and his daughter-in-law committing suicide, his wife dying of unhappiness, and the son ending in being condemned for a crime he didn't commit, ending up in prison. And of course, all the hatred, all the anger directed to the judge. He mentions that his granddaughter works for the house now, but she's also a victim of the judge's son that is trying to abuse her. So in the end, his revenge is all there built up. We saw that there's not much to comment on the drama itself. We all read the story, but what is important here is the desire for revenge. And why is he not attacking the judge directly? Because sometimes we can cause more harm to someone by attacking their loved ones than by attacking the ones themselves, right? So causing the daughter of the judge to die, Saldanha, can cause more harm to the judge than attacking the judge himself. Maybe the judge has some other defenses. It may be more difficult to attack the judge directly. We don't know the details, but what we know is that he can cause more harm to the judge by attacking the daughter. Okay, I spoke a lot here. Any comments, questions here? No, we're good. Everybody curious to see how this goes on? Okay, so let's continue, Philip.
I was surprised to see that our guide did not attempt any spiritual instruction. Looking at Saldana sympathetically, he only stated, "The sowing of pain really is one of the that afflicts us the most." Encouraged by the friendly tone of that statement, Saldana continued, "A lot of people have invited me to make a spiritual transformation, encouraging me to offer a barren forgiveness, but I won't do it. My poor George was unable to resist Irene's delacerated mental pressure and Irasima's oppressed mental pressure and went mad. He was transferred from his humid prison cell to a miserable asylum, but he is more like a caged animal. Do you think my mind has the means to think about compassion when I haven't received it in return? As long as such scenes are before my eyes, I am not open to any religious suggestions. I simply face life. The grave only pulls down the wall of the flesh, whereas our sufferings continue as alive and forceful as when we had to bear our box of bones. It was in that state that the priest, Gregorio, found me and satisfied my innermost longings. He needed someone with a sufficiently hardened soul to preside over the technical withdrawal of this woman. He wants to rob her of her earthly existence slowly, and he has praised my firm spirit. There are almost always a lot of servants available for rectifying commitments, but it's not easy to find one who has made up his mind to persevere in vengeance till the end with the same hatred.
As at the beginning, Gregorio saw that I met that requirement and he entrusted the job to me.
Looking angrily around the room, he shouted, "Everyone here shall pay, everyone." Astonished, I looked at Gubbio, who remained unperturbed and silent. Had it been me, perhaps I would have poured out a long judgmental commentary regarding the law of love that governs our destinies. I would have emphatically demanded the persecutor to pay attention to the teachings of Jesus, and if possible, I would have made him bite his undisciplined and insolent tongue. The instructor did not proceed.
Thanks. So the first thing that is we see here is, again, Andre Luiz getting very uncomfortable with Gubbio not doing anything, right? So he says that I was surprised to see that our guide did not attend any spiritual instruction. Why Gubbio is not attempting any spiritual instruction? Well, Saldana is putting it clear here, right? I'm not ready to any spiritual religious suggestions. I'm not ready to give any forgiveness here. I wasn't given any. I wasn't given any help, any assistance. I was only given suffering and struggles. My poor family. My son is in the asylum. My daughter-in-law committed suicide. My wife died. They are attached to my son. So why should I give forgiveness or attempt any religious, listen to any religious suggestions if nothing is being done to me? Again, I'm not saying that he's right. I'm just trying to make us understand his mind and understanding, above all, why Gubbio is not doing anything at the moment. Why Gubbio is trying to learn. Because to address a situation, we need to fully understand the whole situation to address an issue. So Gubbio is allowing Saldanha to give the whole description of his struggles in order to assess the best way to change this. So Saldanha is saying here that it was in this state of anger and rebelliousness that Gregorio found him. How did Gregorio found him? Well, through the mental vibrations, right? We see all the spirits that are in that strange city that Andre Luiz and Gubbio describe some chapters ago, the city that they found themselves, that they found all these strange spirits, right? You end up going there again. That city, it's not for suffering spirits, it's for spirits that are evil, that are in this state of desire for vengeance, of hatred, spirits that are with their perispiritual forms deformed by their disturbed minds, right? So that's where Gregorio found him and Saldanha. And why did he choose Saldanha? Because he needed someone with a sufficient heart and soul to preside over the technical withdrawal of this woman. So the hatred that Saldanha has for the judge and the desire of vengeance is what made Gregorio chose him to lead the team that was going to cause the slow death of Margarida, and that he's presiding. He says here, it's not easy to find one who had made up his mind to persevere in vengeance till the end with the same hatred as the beginning, meaning that someone that doesn't change their mind, that continues to do their work until the end without being affected by external influences trying to alleviate the pain of the sufferers and things like that. And the state of anger that he's in, he's saying here, everyone here shall pay. His hatred is towards everyone in the house. And then, of course, Andre Luiz, again, looks at Gubbio, who remains unperturbed and silent. What did Andre Luiz said he would do, and what we would do? Perhaps I would have poured a long judgmental commentary regarding the law of love, talk about Jesus, demand the persecutor pay attention to the teachings of Jesus, and made him bite his tongue. And why didn't Gubbio do any of that? Because it wouldn't work. Gubbio knows the state of mind that Saldanha has, and knows that words are not going to change him. You know, for us that work in the mediumship meetings, sometimes we face with spirits. We are faced with spirits that comes, spirits that are still in this inferior state of mind that wants to persecute and wants to kill those, attack those that they are attached to. And we talk and talk and talk, and apparently nothing changes, because sometimes, you know, the words are not going to make a difference. The sentiment, the love, the help and assistance that we can give to those spirits in need is what's going to make a difference. So Gubbio knows better. Gubbio understands what needs to be done with this type of spirit. And of course, we are going to see later in the book how Gubbio works to rescue Saldanha. So how do you think a spirit like Saldanha can be helped in this situation? Anyone? Any guess?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
How do we think that a spirit like Saldanha can be helped? What's the best way to help a spirit like him? We know that words are not going to help, are not going to make any difference. So what's going to make a difference?
he's not able to reason properly at this time. So at this point, only through vibrations of positive, of loving energies towards him. And the possible best way is through prayer.
Yes, definitely. In a situation like that, is positive vibrations and love. But really, what does Saldanha want? Help, right? We all need help. What type of help does he need? He needs help with the family, right? With the son, with the wife, with the daughter-in-law, with the granddaughter, the incarnates and discarnates ones. And Gubbio knows that. So that's what we're going to see later in the book. Not in this chapter yet, but later in the book, right? It's not words, it's action. Action sometimes is the only way that we can make things change for these hardened spirits that words are not going to make a difference. Even words with a full heart open to assistance, they can soften a little bit the hardened hearts. But action is what's going to make a difference, right? Action, positive action towards the person. But we see here the first reaction that we would have is exactly what Andre Luiz is talking here. So that's why I underlined this phrase, because that's how we would try to argue with Saldanha. And there is no argument here with a spirit like this. There's no winning an argument with a spirit like this. We can talk to the end about Jesus. He's not interested in listening about Jesus. He's interested in revenge. He's interested in finding the ones that were responsible for his misery to pay. And he thinks he's going to get reward by seeing those that made him suffer to suffer. And we know that that's not going to, in the end, that's a very fleeting satisfaction, because it doesn't solve our problems. Other people suffering doesn't solve our problems. You know, we can look at others suffering, the others that made us suffer, and see them suffering and be happy for a very brief moment in the, you know, that vengeance type of happiness. But in the end, our problems are still there. So it won't change anything. So that's not the solution. We need to learn that the solution is something else. It's a different, right? Comments here, questions?
When you hear someone go and put their life in front of you like that without being asked, the question for Gubbio is, why does the boss trust you? And he used the opportunity to display all his life story to justify his hatred. That in itself is a scream for help. That in itself is telling, I am enclosed inside of this prison over here, and I need help to get out of it. I don't know how to do it.
Okay. Yes. Go ahead, Wayne.
I want to.
Go ahead, Phil.
Go ahead, Wayne. Sorry, Paco. Wayne raised something before. Just a sec.
You know, it reminds me of the times when we say there's nothing we can do. You know, we just there's a person, there's a situation, and we say there's nothing we can do, when actually there's always something we can do. It just doesn't. It may not appear to me that there is, but it's prayer and sending the proper vibrations to that person in hope that for change. So yeah, it's very interesting there for me.
Yeah, and then you brought a point, right? A very important point, and I'll also combine with what Elmo said, right? Sometimes we don't know how to fix. We need help. He's crying for help, exactly that, right? Sometimes we don't recognize we need help, but we need help, and we need to be open to receive help, right? And that's many of us, we close ourselves for the help. We are suffering, we immerse in ourselves in our hatred, our suffering, and we don't open ourselves to be helped. And without help, sometimes we can't move forward. We need help, external help, different situations, different type of help, spiritual help, physical help, any type of help, right? So yes, Paco.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say that, it's interesting that his behavior is kind of understandable because, his son was accused. So even though the behavior is understandable, that doesn't mean it's justifiable. But I can understand the hatred. Do you understand? And I
Yes.
sometimes wonder, now I'm looking at it in terms of beyond the stage itself, that this hatred that is so corrosive to his soul, in a way, is part of his learning too, because eventually he's going to find out how corrosive that energy is. I guess I'm very positive because I even see, even in the negative, I can see always like the what we call the silver lining.
The laws of progress, right, Paco? So we are, even if through this dark,
exactly,
we are always learning. We are always progressing.
Exactly. Because and this is personal. I guess I'm projecting myself. For me, it was kind of very hard to forgive. I'm telling you the truth, and I just couldn't forgive. I have to also share that with you. Okay, I only had to show the willingness to forgive. And that's what I always say, that forgiveness is a byproduct of the willingness to do it, because sometimes we just cannot do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just cannot do it. And it's like I said many times in my own prayers, I cannot do this. I'm willing to do it, but I cannot do it. So my point is that behaviors are to an extent understandable. And sometimes we, through that anguish is where we learn. And I guess I look at the silver lining. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, no, and he's crying for help here, Saldanha, and he's going to be helped.
Exactly. And that hatred is asking for help. Yes.
Yeah, but like I almost said, he's crying for help. I almost said very well, and
yes.
We're going to see how the help, but we're going to learn later in the book how is the effective way of helping that Gubbio knows and Andre Luiz doesn't know yet. Andre Luiz wants to go there with words or actions against Saldanha, and that's not the best path. And we are going to see why later, right? So it's each situation is a different situation, right?
Yes.
Each case is a different case. A case like this is a very serious case, a very complex case, and you need someone that has the knowledge and the experience of Gubbio in this case as to make changes to the situation. But that's for next month. We won't see this month. This chapter is still goes. Before that, we go in a different direction here. Okay.
The instructor did not proceed like that, however. He smiled without saying a word, trying to hide his sadness. 2 or 3 long minutes passed. The clock showed 11:45 a.m. when we heard someone coming. "It's her doctor," said Saldanha, with obvious sarcasm. "He's going to look for lesions and microbes, but he won't find any." Just then, an elderly gentleman entered the room along with Gabriel, the victim's husband. The doctor approached the patient and kindly offered her some words of encouragement. Margarita tried to smile, but couldn't. She didn't have the strength. As they were talking, an obviously well-meaning spirit entered. He saw us and showed that he understood our status. Because he looked cautiously at us without saying anything, he approached the doctor as if he were his devoted assistant.
The specialist did not seem deeply interested in the case, but after he had examined Margarita in her troubling torpor,
he conversed with the victim's husband superficially. He stated that in his opinion, the young woman was obviously under the control of secondary epilepsy, and that in the final analysis, he would get the help of eminent colleagues and submit her to a detailed examination of the cerebral meningeal injury, followed by the recommended surgery. Next, however, the newly arrived spirit put its right hand on the doctor's forehead as if he wanted to transmit some providential help to him. The doctor was reluctant, but in a few minutes, urged by an outside suggestion that he could not comprehend precisely, he took Gabriel to one of the corners and asked him, "Why don't you try spiritism? Lately, I have heard of a few puzzling cases that have been resolved successfully via that kind of psychotherapy." And to show that he had not surrendered his scientific approach to religious idealism, he added, "According to what we now know, hypnotic suggestion is a mysterious, almost unknown power." The patient's husband willingly received this advice and asked, "How could you help me out with it?" The physician hesitated somewhat and replied, "Well, I don't have many connections with the exponents of the subject, but according to what I believe, there wouldn't be a problem with trying at least." He wrote out some prescriptions for drugs and injections and then got ready to leave as Saldana, in complete control of the situation, laughed in scorn.
So, Gubbio, well, Andre Luiz, we read what Andre Luiz would have liked to do. Gubbio didn't do anything like that. He smiled without saying a word, trying to hide his sadness. And then a doctor came, a doctor, incarnated doctor, okay? The doctor that is the physical world. And Saldana is making fun of the doctor, that's saying that the good doctor is going to look for physical problems and won't find any. And the doctor gets in the room with Gabriel, start talking to her, but it's interesting that when the doctor enters, another spirit enters. And the spirit that entered looked at Gubbio, Andre Luiz, and Eloy, and immediately understood that they were not evil spirits or persecuting spirits. He understood their status, but didn't say anything because he knows that they are there in a sense disguised, as we read before, and Gubbio and Andre Luiz and Eloy, they darken their perispirit to become similar to those spirits that were there. But for a more evolved spirit, like this spirit that comes to assist the doctor, he can see beyond the perispirit, and he understands that Gubbio, Andre Luiz, and Eloy are not the type of spirits that are attacking Margarita. But he's there accompanying the doctor, right? The doctor didn't seem very interested in the case. I'll ask Elmo if he has any comments later on the diagnosis of the doctor. I don't think there is much to add here. But the spirit immediately tried to influence the doctor, and the doctor, without knowing why, starts saying, "Why don't you try spiritism?" Remember, in Brazil, it's much more common to everybody to have heard about Spiritism. And so if someone suggests it, even if the person doesn't know exactly what is, how does Spiritism work, they heard about Spiritism. So the doctor says that he heard some puzzling cases that resolved through psychotherapy. Gabriel, the husband, asked for help, and he said that he doesn't have any connections, but you won't have a problem in finding it. And Saldanha is laughing because he understands that nothing that the doctor is saying or doing there is going to make any difference. Okay. Elmo, any comments on the medical treatment here that is of relevance or no?
No, not really.
Not really, right?
I don't know why you suspect epilepsy in that case. I don't know how was the advancement of the medicine of that time. To think of meningitis when it says cerebral meningeal system kind of makes sense, but I don't know. It's kind of primitive medicine, basically, to what we have today.
Yeah, we have to remember that this book was written in 1940, so medicine has evolved a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Wayne.
You know, I find this kind of very concerning that you know, when I would look at someone who's ill, I would think of only the physical issues that this person is dealing with in his illness, and I wouldn't, even now, it wouldn't come to me to the idea that it's there's more than just his physical issues to deal with. There's spirits involved, and spirits actually doing things. So it's a little scary, and it's a little awakening to realize that these things could be happening to people that we're actually viewing right in front of us.
You know, normally, Elmo, if you want to say what would normally we say to those that come to the center, you know, with the physical and spiritual illnesses, right?
It's absolutely the medical doctor, the physical sciences deal with organic bodies, looks for dysfunction in the organic system, and that's the way it should be. As we evolve, eventually you keep in mind that there is something more than organic, but we always try to rule out first any possible physical organic problem before you jump into spiritual causes. The job of a doctor is to treat the body, not the soul. And that's why I think the superior spirit over there suggests the doctor, to advise them to look something beyond the physical.
Yeah, and clearly this doctor was not prepared for that, right?
Yeah.
But just coming back to you, Wayne, you know, in spiritist centers, what we do through the passes is try to balance the physical and spiritual bodies, because they harmonizing the spiritual and physical body is a way of helping and assisting us incarnates. The treatment of the physical body is important through the regular medicine, but we need to address the spiritual side of it, if possible. You know, always remembering to treat both at the same time, right? And whenever there is some more serious issues, we need to have a more ample view of the problem to try to see if there is any spiritual component, which sometimes we know that there is always a spiritual component to the issues, but sometimes it is just the karma. It is what it, you know, the person has to go through it. And we shouldn't be too much scared, because these are very special cases that we're reading here. These are the exceptions. This is not the common cases that we see every day. We are all influenced by spirits. We all have our invisible friends around us, but the influence they have over our lives is as big as we allow it to be. Most of our defenses have to be on elevating our vibrations, on protecting ourselves, on keeping a vibrational level, healthy vibrational level. We are able to prevent this type of attacks. We are able to not be seriously attacked by spirits. So here, of course, this we need to look at the special cases, and that's what we are looking at this book, which are the extreme cases, and that you see a very heavy influence of the spirits that can cause some serious damage, and that cannot be identified by the regular medicine. But we have to be careful not to get too much impressed negatively by these cases, because these are extreme cases. These are the exception. These are not the regular issues that we face on our daily lives. And again, we learn from spiritism that we have spirits around us influencing us all the time, but it's also in a positive way, in a very positive way, if we know how to open ourselves and allow them to help us and assist us. So I understand your concern, but remember, what we're seeing here is the exception, not the rule. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so Gubbio discussed some matters with the discarnate inquisitor and then explained to me.
Andre, we have agreed that you should go with the doctor and make observations. However, come back here in a few hours. I understood that our guide was giving me an opportunity to gain some new knowledge, and I cautiously and contentedly accompanied the troubled specialist. Away from the place where our instructor was locked in an odd battle, I approached the personality that was assisting the doctor, and we engaged in a friendly dialogue. The new friend's name was Mauricio. He had been the doctor's assistant as an incarnate. Now he watched over him and assisted him in his professional undertakings. All physicians, he asserted, even if they have a materialistic mind that is impermeable to religious faith, rely on spirit friends who help them. Human health is one of the most valuable of all divine gifts. But when, because of neglect or a lack of discipline, people mistreat it, it is difficult to restore their centers of equilibrium, because everyone knows that the worst deaf person is the one that does not want to hear. However, as for those on the spirit plane who aid human progress, there are always ways to guard the organic harmony so that people's health is not harmed. Of course, there are awful errors in medicine, and we cannot avoid them. Our assistants cannot surpass the receptive feel of those who want to heal others or themselves. Even so, we always act on the side of overall health as far as possible. And with a deeply significant expression, he exclaimed, "Ah, if doctors would only pray." We arrived at our destination shortly before our incarnate friend.
The residence was a comfortable one, but in spite of the lovely grounds around it, it was overflowing with disagreeable fluids.
The environment in the home was highly troubled. Mauricio explained without preliminaries. We are highly interested in our friend's involvement in the grand questions of the soul in order to improve the woman's infirm mind. That is why, using indirect means, we have led him to books and publications on the matter. Nonetheless, contrary to our desires, not only do middle-class prejudices predominate, but also the pernicious influence that his second wife has on him. A very intelligent man, but extremely attached to rewarding his senses, our friend could not stand widowhood. Consequently, 5 years ago, he married a young woman who demands a lot of him, despite his older age. This has given rise to a very serious state of affairs. The first wife discarnated and left behind 2 boys. She is still attached to the home, which she regards as her exclusive property. No matter how hard we try, we have not yet managed to remove her because her sons' thoughts are in conflict with their fathers and stepmothers, and they are constantly inciting her to do something. The mental duel in this home is enormous. No one yields, no one asks for forgiveness, and the ongoing spiritual battle has transformed the place into an arena of darkness. The informant paused, and we could see that in her striking position of rebelliousness, the discarnate former lady of the house was in fact connected to one of her sons, a young man about 18 years old who was nervously smoking in an easy chair. He was a perfect receptacle for his mother's rebellious mind. His head was full of troubling and wrongful thoughts. Highly tenuous magnetic threads connected him to his unfortunate mother.
His hands were doubled into fists, and he looked like he was contriving diabolical plans.
And despite Mauricio's attempts to help them, neither he nor his jealous mother proved to be capable of receiving his restorative influence. I have done all I can, explained my new companion, to instill lofty spiritual values in this home, but it is a highly resistant arena. Just then, the doctor came through the door, and Mauricio placed his benevolent hand on his forehead to provide him with precise intuition about Margarita's case. The specialist immediately began to ponder the matter that Mauricio suggested, recalling a certain technical publication. It was the only way he could register his spirit friend's thoughts. His efforts proved unsuccessful. The son attacked his father with caustic accusations for being so late for lunch. The doctor quickly disconnected his mind from our invisible threads, immersing it in a whirlwind of antagonistic vibrations. The discarnate wife also approached him in a fury. I watched to see as she slapped his face, although he did not notice it. Yet the blood concentrated in the area of the temples, and his face displayed undisguised rage. He muttered a few words full of indignation and lost all spiritual contact with us.
Other drama, right? And so this chapter is very dramatic in the stories.
I didn't know I agreed to be part of them. What do you call those melodramas? Oh God.
Yeah, the soap opera.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, this chapter is a real soap opera. So what Andre Luiz, Gubbio recommends Andre Luiz to go with Mauricio, the spirit that was assisting the doctor, and to follow the story there. We learned that Mauricio was the doctor's assistant when he was incarnate, so he worked with the doctor directly, and going back to the spiritual world, he decides to continue working and assisting the doctor because, like Mauricio says here, all physicians, even if they have a materialistic mind that is impermeable to religious faith, rely on spirit friends who help them. Why? Because here,
You froze again, Joe?
Yep, he did.
we're not talking about the doctors only. We're talking deserve to receive a proper sorry. Hello? Yes. Okay. I'm back.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
You
So
we lost you when you start to explain why doctors are assisted spiritually.
yeah, so the doctors receive assistance, spiritual assistance, because the patients deserve to receive the assistance, right? So the doctors are never working by themselves. They're working with the assistance of spiritual benefactors if they can be instruments of help and assistance for the patients that they are treating. So that's the role that Mauricio chose here to help and assist this physician. Again, Andre Luiz mentions here, our assistants cannot, Mauricio mentions, our assistants cannot surpass the receptive field of those who want to heal others or themselves. But we always act on side of the overall health as far as possible. So they are available, they are trying to help and assist the doctors and the patients that are in need, even if the doctor or the patients are not receptive to spiritual influences. Because there is, the spiritual influences are part of the issue, but they are not everything, right? So it is important here to understand that the assistance is always there, is always provided. But of course, as Mauricio said, if doctors would only pray, that would make a big difference, because they will open themselves to receive the assistance of the spiritual benefactors. So when they arrive at home, at the home of the house of this doctor, we see here the situation in the house is not very, very good, right? So the first wife of the doctor had died and didn't leave the house, remain attached to the two kids, as she is the owner, still the owner of the house. The two sons are influenced by her against the second wife. He got married again because he couldn't stay alone. So he married a young woman that is very demanding of him. And all the efforts of influencing spiritually the family are not making much of an effect on the family. So again, we see another case of someone that discarnates like Saldanha, but is incapable of leaving behind the environment that she was living, because she is too connected still to the sons, to the husband, to the house, and of course she doesn't want to accept the intruder, which is the new wife. We'll see very shortly that the new wife also doesn't help much, but because of herself. We already see her that she's demanding, right? So the influence that that Mauricio is trying to make on the doctor, so he reads a publication, because they access that he doesn't have any spiritual inclination. So the influence has to be through material connection. So he tries to make him look at a certain publication to research more about the case of Margarida, but very quickly the son starts shouting at him, accusing him, and the doctor disconnected from Mauricio and from Andre Luiz, and enters into the same wavelength of the sons and of the house, the inferior vibrations of the house. The former wife, the discarnate wife, attacks him. He doesn't feel her directly, but the blood goes to the temple, and he becomes angry. Right, the rage comes, and he becomes angry, and then he lost completely the interaction, the contact with Andre Luiz and Mauricio. You see the importance thing here is the ambient of the house, right? The spiritual ambient of the house, how it's important for us to try to keep an elevated environment in our own houses to prevent this type of things to happen. Every time we lower our vibrations and allow the inferior spirits to connect with us, we can cause harm to ourselves and to everyone that is in our houses. Again, it's a alert to all of us, but it's something that we have the tools to fight. We have the tools to address these issues, and we can address these issues knowing what to do. Okay. Any soap opera comments here, or we go to the end? Okay, so let's go to the end.
Mauricio was insufferably disappointed and said, "It's always like this. It is very hard for us to approach those whom we plan to help on the physical plane. We are given invaluable opportunities for spiritual accomplishment, such as the one involving Margarita. However, our attempts result in utter frustration. A man educated by means of academic responsibility should, by himself, possess a holy curiosity regarding life and abstain from certain practices entailing the selfish satisfaction of the incarnate experience. However, people usually pursue such satisfaction until they completely wear out their bodies. No matter how much we try to get them to make the invariable trip from the periphery to the center so that they can
conform to the imperatives of the life that awaits them beyond the grave, our efforts are nearly always considered delayable and pointless."
Mauricio smiled enigmatically and added, "And we can see that this man that has been called by society to heal others." Meanwhile, the little family gathered around the table, and the doctor's second wife really impressed me with her refined aspect. Her makeup was impeccable, her garb was excellent and sober, and her jewelry was tasteful. Her hairdo harmoniously enhanced the depth of her look, but she was surrounded by a dark gray aura, which betrayed how little she had grown spiritually. Socially speaking, she seemed to be very refined, but when they had finished eating, she gave evidence of her deplorable mental condition. After an unfortunate argument with her husband, the young woman went to take a nap on a large, soft couch. Mauricio invited me to observe her as she rested, and I was astonished, stunned, even that I did not see the same physiological traits in her perispirit which had abandoned her resting body. I did notice a slight similarity between, but the woman had truly become unrecognizable. Her face looked like it belonged to one of those witches in old children's tales. Her mouth, eyes, nose, and ears were somewhat monstrous. Not even the rebellious first wife had the courage to confront her. She withdrew half scared and tried to hide behind her son. I remembered the book in which Oscar Wilde tells the story of Dorian Gray's portrait, which would gradually acquire a horrendous visage as the owner changed inwardly due to the practice of evil. And when I looked at Mauricio questioningly, he explained, yes, my friend, Wilde's imagination did not hallucinate. Men and women, with their thoughts, attitudes, words, and actions, create within themselves their true spirit form. Each crime, each downfall leaves
horrendous marks on the soul, just as each benevolent action and each worthy thought increases the beauty and perfection of the pure spiritual form,
within which the real individuality manifests, especially after the death of the dense body. There are people who are attractive and admirable physically, but who are true mental monsters at heart, just as there are deformed and ugly bodies that hide angelic spirits of celestial beauty. And nodding toward the unfortunate woman as she was leaving the house, partially free of her physical body, he added, this poor sister is under the control of scoffing, animalistic spirits who will keep her terribly imbalanced for a long time to come, unless she acquires a renewing faith, sanctifying ideas, and worthy behavior. We don't think she will be able to avoid the perils she's in, and will only remember to weep, learn, and dedicate herself to the good when she finally leaves the physical vessel, which is truly witch-like for now. The matter was really fascinating and the lesson truly valuable. Unfortunately, I was out of time. I had to get back.
Okay, so here we go again, more of soap opera, right? But here there are some interesting things to learn. First, Mauricio mentions that the doctor had a wonderful opportunity with his learning, his academic responsibility, but he still focused much more on the physical selfish satisfaction than the spiritual values, and he's missing a wonderful opportunity to grow spiritually. He mentions then the second wife comes, right? And he describes the second wife as a very, by physical standards, very beautiful woman, right? Very well dressed, good makeup, jewelry, the hair, but looking from the spiritual side, she was surrounded by a dark gray aura. Again, the aura is the energies that we emit, our spirit emits, that those that can see in the spiritual world can see our aura, but some incarnates also can see the aura. The aura is not the perispirit. This is very important to remember. The aura is the energies emitted by us as eternal spirits that can be luminous, like we see in the evolved spirits, and that's how the idea of angels came, right? The luminosity on the halo above the head, and behind the spirit gives the idea of ourselves as old incarnates here, to represent them with wings and the halo, which is the luminous energies of evolved spirits, how they look to us. The less evolved spirits, the evil spirits, who are surrounded by a dark, like she is here, a dark gray aura, which betrayed how little she has grown spiritually, right? So she's all with the inferior tendencies prevailing over anything positive that she may have. And Andre Luiz describes when she goes to sleep and the perispirit her perispirit detaches from the physical body, he sees a monstrous perispirit, right? Some similarity, because of course, with the perispirit is what forms the physical body, but we, through our actions, through our vibrations, we are modifying our perispirit, and she has transformed her perispirit in a ugly perispirit. Andre Luiz describes as it looking like a witch, right? With a mouth, eyes, nose completely deformed, monstrous. And actually the first wife, which is someone that is not evil, is just someone that is suffering and doesn't know where to go and decides to stay around, becomes afraid of her and goes in hiding. And then Andre Luiz mentions that he remembers the book, the story of Dorian Gray, right? For those that don't know the story of Dorian Gray's portrait, Dorian Gray, it's a short story by Oscar Wilde. Dorian Gray is a young guy that is very concerned about his physical beauty and the preservation of his physical attributes. And when he's painted by a painter, and he sees his portrait, he makes a pact with the devil that he would only get old and lose the physical form in the portrait, and he would always be in this physical form, young and beautiful. And as he starts enjoying the pleasures of the physical life, which is all he was interested, and by doing that, becoming evil and committing some evil acts, the portraits start to deform, get more and more deformed, more and more ugly, and he would keep his physical beauty and physical form until he hides the portrait in a dressing, and finally, eventually he finds the portrait. The portrait is horrendous, and after a lot of struggles, he recognizes his ill behavior, and he ends up, after many years, he ends up exchanging with the portrait. He dies with all the ugliness of the portrait, and portrait goes back to the original form of his beautiful young form. It's a very interesting book. There are movies, you can watch the movies, but the interesting thing for us here is to compare the portrait to our perispirit, how we affect our perispirit with our thoughts, our vibrations. So if we watch the movie and think of the portrait as our perispirit, understanding how our actions can influence our spiritual body, it will help you have a different view of the whole story. And of course, Oscar Wilde must have been inspired by the spiritual benefactors. It's interesting because when he wrote this by commission, and the one that commissioned him commissioned Conan Doyle to write at the same table, at the same lunch. Conan Doyle was commissioned to write a short story also. This was before Conan Doyle became a spiritualist. So he was still in the Sherlock Holmes phase of Arthur Conan Doyle, the famous writer. Okay, so that's then Mauricio talks about the sad forecast for the woman, the young woman, that she's dominated by animalistic spirits, and that unless she changes her behavior, which is possible, which we can always do, she's going to struggle and suffer a lot. But this is the end of the story of the doctor. We are not going to hear about him and his story anymore. So that's it for this. So next month we start looking at a different part of the story when Andre Luiz, when Gabriel takes Margarida to a medium as a first experience to interact with some spiritual help and understanding. Okay. Any questions, comments here on what we read? No? Okay, I hope you enjoyed the soap opera of today, 2 different stories. And I hope you can take some knowledge of Spiritism associated with it, which is also the objective here and the importance of why we study these books, because there is also a lot of information of Spiritism that we can take from it. So next week, the second week of the month, we are going to study the Gospel according to Spiritism. Okay, and today at 3 p.m. New York time, we have the launch of another edition of the Spiritist Review, the Spiritist magazine. We have a live that it's in Portuguese, so for those that understand Portuguese, you can find the information on the International Spiritist Council website, and Jussara is going to be part of it. It's actually she's interviewed in this new edition of the magazine, which is number 7, that is being available today through the International Spiritist Council website, and you can download. Sorry?
It has an English version as well, of the Spiritist Review.
Yes. The publication is in several languages, including English. It has the English version with a lot of the articles in English. Yes. Yes, Philip.
How do we get a copy in English?
I already sent to the SGNY WhatsApp that we have the PDF copy, and also the digital one that is in Portuguese. So if you wanted to look at the pictures,
you can if you go to the chat, you can download from there quickly. I posted there. Okay, I'll give some time for everyone to open from there. Click the link there and open from it. Okay. If you go down there, you see there the versions there in English, French, Spanish, Italian below when you open the page. Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Carol, can you do our final prayer? Carol is still there? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, sure. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, John,
thanks.
Elmo, and Jussara, and everyone. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks for the opportunity today to be together as brothers and sisters for our study of the book Liberation, Chapter 10, A Learning Experience. We use our free will to keep our vibrations positive and focused. We trust in the good and we keep the faith. We face our challenges directly with effort, for we are learning and evolving each and every day, attuned to the benefactors, the good spirits, the spiritual doctors for guidance. We do our part as an individual, and hopefully we can also do our part as a group. There is a spiritual component to healing and well-being. We are protected, especially with helping in situations of extreme cases and with spiritual influences. We give thanks to our spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, the helpers, the healers who are guiding us each and every day. We are grateful for keeping our spirits uplifted and that we can do the best work by keeping our vibrations intact and our thoughts focused and our hearts open. May we continue throughout the week with our prayers, with our studies, and with our mindfulness, knowing that we are never alone, that help is available as we ask for it and as we do our part. May we humbly ask now for safety and protection as we go forth to family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, helping us, guiding us, and keeping us steady and moving forward in a positive direction. We ask now for the greater good in the world. We ask for peace, a peace beyond our own understanding, but a peace that is possible. We ask for help with the suffering spirits, those in the physical world as those in the spiritual world also. We give thanks for SGNY and all the spiritist centers in the United States and in the world. We are really grateful for having the opportunity to have the wisdom, the studies, and this wisdom imparted to us by our teachers and those who are guiding us. We close now and ask to be reminded that we are beacons of light. We are open in our hearts, in our minds, to be of assistance, to be of service, which is love in action. Go forth now in gratitude and peace. So be it.